Tonight on Treasure Detectives, an American hero's out-of-this-world accessories takes a whole new journey.
These cufflinks would have been to the moon.
Yeah.
They're worth $500,000.
No way.
And a Mormon leader's private collections are exposed.
If they're real, they could be worth $200,000.
Really?
Catherine, Grant, you got your work cut out.
It's a letter to Commander Armstrong from Richard Nixon.
Wow.
Hiram Smith married into polygamy, actually, so there's a lot of information corresponds with the different wives.
I've had a number of forgeries.
Smithsonian Archive, please. We do have our answer.
The possibilities that those three pieces have can change quite a few lives.
I come to Salt Lake City, the home of the Mormons, to meet Ken Sanders, a rare book dealer who allegedly has some very, very rare Mormon books. Ken.
Hi there, Ken Sanders.
Nice to meet you, sir. They could be worth a fortune.
Welcome to the bookshop.
You must have thousands of books here.
Over here's where I keep some of our rarities.
Okay.
The books that I'd like you to examine, I keep those in the safe in the back room. I'm Ken Sanders. I'm a rare book dealer. I've dealt in books for 37 years. What you live for in the rare book business is the historically significant find. Once in a while, we get very lucky.
And is all the valuable stuff kept in here?
The most valuable books here, yeah.
All right. Okay.
These are the Mormon periodical, The Times and Seasons. You can see they're a bit fragile.
Yeah.
This is a complete set.
The Times and Seasons was a Mormon newspaper which spread the gospel in the earliest days of the religion. Ken's books are the actual issues from the 1840s bound together into books.
What makes them quite valuable is that they are, in fact, I believe, to be Hiram Smith's personal set. I just don't think it gets better than that.
Wow. Hiram Smith was a leader in the Mormon Church from its beginnings in the early 1800s. The fact that he owned the books is what makes them so valuable.
So what makes you think they're the real thing? And where did you get them from?
I acquired them from Hiram Smith's descendants directly.
Or so they said. Perhaps we should investigate that.
Well, yeah, I can't argue with you. You could be right. I guess I did believe their story. The Hiram Smith name appears at the front. It's my belief where they're positioned at the masthead of each new issue that these were his subscription copies.
But there's been a lot of fakes of this before, hasn't there? And have you seen any yourself? Have you had any?
Yes, I've had a number of Mark Hoffman forgeries of early LDS leaders.
Okay.
In the 1980s, a notorious forger made millions faking Mormon documents and then murdered 2 people to cover up his crimes. The scandal rocked the Mormon community. So this kind of story is big stakes.
What do you think they're worth, Ken?
6 figures.
Wow. And you paid a lot for them?
Yeah.
If they're fake, then they're firewood, for want of a better word.
I don't think I have to tell you the past 5 years, we've been in kind of an economic depression. And a sale of 6 figures is a huge amount of money. And to have them proven not authentic would be, I don't want to think about it, it's devastating.
Ken purchased the books from an alleged descendant who wants to remain anonymous. We have to make sure they really are related to the Hiram Smith, or Ken's out of pocket a lot of money.
How do you prove somebody forged something?
That's always the difficulty.
That means an awful lot to me, both financially and the sake of reputation as well.
I completely understand.
So I'm going to take these back with me.
Okay,
Thank you, Ken.
Curtis, thank you.
I'll see you soon.
I'm home.
Hey!
So how many wives do you have now?
I've got 19 wives now.
Oh, yes.
Mormons, you see.
Of course.
Fascinating. So we've got the Times and Seasons, a set of books that allegedly was owned by one of the founders of the Mormon religion. And if they're real, they could be worth $200,000.
Really?
Wow.
Now, the Times and Seasons was a Mormon newspaper from the 1830s, 1840s.
And so this is like a compilation.
This is basically all the newspapers bound together. This is a complete set. Now, that's rare in itself, but this is a particularly important set. These books appear to be Hiram Smith's own personal copies.
Hiram Smith's brother Joseph Smith was the founder of the church, which was so controversial at the time that both brothers were murdered by an angry mob. The martyrdom of Hiram Smith makes these books even more important and valuable.
These books look old. Who knows? Now, this is our owner. Ken is a book dealer.
Who was in ZZ Top.
Yeah, some beers.
Ken wants to keep secret the original owners of the book, the people that sold them to him.
Yeah.
Well, because there was lots of forgeries done in the 80s of this kind of thing.
Okay.
The forger murdered 2 people just to keep his forgery secret. So, if these turn out to be real, this is like his golden find. If these turn out to be fake, who's going to go into his bookshop again?
The thing is, though, forgers love faking books.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
You can age the binding, you can age the pages.
Well, let's do it. Let's see if our books can fool an expert.
What about this story? I mean, the linkage to Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith.
Yeah, I mean, just working out whether these books are old doesn't give them $200,000 worth of value.
No.
What gives them the value is that provenance. The 3 elements of this item we'll examine are the genealogy of the Smith family,
The paper, is it consistent with the period? The binding, is it machine-bound or done by hand, as it would have been in the early 1800s?
Okay, so, Catherine, Grant, this is yours.
Okay.
You got your work cut out, that's for sure.
Yes, we do.
Also, have I got a tale for you? This is going to appeal to you, Mr. Smith. Neil Armstrong's Cufflinks.
Yeah.
He's into all this space stuff.
Space stuff.
He really
Space
is,
stuff.
yeah. Now, these cufflinks were given to the astronauts before the moonshot by Nixon.
Allegedly, Neil Armstrong brought them aboard Apollo 11 in his personal effects envelope.
So these cufflinks would have been to the moon.
On the first lunar landing.
So that makes them even more significant. When the Apollo 11 spacecraft landed on the moon in July 1969, it began a new phase of American and human history. Since then, items and objects from the Apollo program, and especially the landing itself, have become an expensive way for collectors to own a piece of human history.
Hence the astronomical figure.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks for that. Now, here's the man that owns it, Adam. They were left to him by his grandfather. Now, his grandfather was a chef. And after the moonshot, there was this dinner, and the dinner was so great, Neil Armstrong gave him his cufflinks and the tie-pin.
Wow.
So his grandfather died 10 odd years ago. Adam's had them in a safe ever since. And now he wants to sell them. I mean, it sounds brilliant, doesn't it?
It does.
If it's true.
Yeah, yeah.
So if these cufflinks are Neil Armstrong's, they're worth $500,000.
What?
No way.
We are adding to the history of America and the space race by authenticating these.
Yeah.
No pressure.
There's a cocktail called the Astronaut. Guess what's in it? Vodka rum.
Right.
Oh, and dark rum. If you took that up into space, you drank that, would you get drunk quicker because it's zero gravity and the oxygen?
But how would you drink it in the first place?
Well, you get those squeezy little things, isn't it?
Do you know, technology's wasted on you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shall we? Adam, nice to meet you.
Come in.
Today we've got Adam bringing in his Apollo 11 cufflinks and tie-pin. I'm looking forward to seeing what could be the most historic pair of cufflinks in the world. So what's the story, Adam?
The story that I grew up with was that my grandfather, Dino Mariscotti, was the executive chef at the Century Plaza Hotel. When my grandfather came out to greet the guests, Neil Armstrong had said it was the best meal he'd ever had and took him off and gave him to him.
Wow.
Imagine that happening, though, here.
Have these.
He must have been the best chef in the world.
Richard Nixon apparently had the cufflinks made for each astronaut on the Apollo mission. I have been told that Neil Armstrong took his set to the moon and back.
Anything to do with this lunar landing would have been huge.
Hopefully that's the way it happened.
So these would have been the only cufflinks ever on the Earth that had been to the moon?
Yeah.
Forgers prey on big events and historic moments. No bigger hero is there than the people that walked on the moon. In this instance, a set of cufflinks are cheap to make and easy to add a story to. And that's why it's so difficult to sort the real from the fake. We've got such a job with this.
I had called and emailed NASA trying to get a hold of Neil Armstrong to say, if it is true, can you write me a letter or something saying that this is
give you some
what
provenance of it, yeah.
2 months later, it was in the news that he had passed.
Yeah.
Have you ever worn them? No. Did your grandfather ever wear them, do you know?
He did. I
You'd
mean, how
dine out on
amazing.
that for the rest of
You
your
would,
life
wouldn't
when
you?
there's a
That's
story.
amazing.
How long you had them?
Since he died in 2002.
Okay. Feeling all right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they because your grandfather's?
I just haven't seen him in a long time.
So it's stirred up a lot of base emotions in there that you've been keeping bottled in and that.
Our grandfather raised my sister and I. I was very close to him.
Yeah. So these are pretty important items.
I just haven't seen him in a long time.
I can imagine they would still have a lot of emotions, though. Now, it's a famous family story. The grandfather received these cufflinks from Neil Armstrong, who had been given them by the president. And I think Adam believes every last word of it. He obviously misses his grandfather, and he holds these items in high esteem. So this is a slightly different journey for us, because if these turn out to be fake, what we've done is we've broken a family story that's been going on for years. Well, we'll definitely get to the bottom of it for you. That's for sure. We won't let him down either. I've sent Andy to Beverly Hills, California, to find out a bit more about Neil Armstrong's cufflinks and tie clip. We'll be looking at 3 areas on the cufflinks and tie clip. The materials. What are they made of, and were they manufactured in the 1960s? The backstory. Did Nixon give the Apollo 11 crew these cufflinks as gifts? And if he did Neil Armstrong give these cufflinks away to Adam's grandfather at a dinner? Meanwhile, I return to Salt Lake City to commence our investigation into Ken's Mormon books. Hello, David.
Welcome to Family History Library.
Thanks very much. Today I'm at the Family History Library to meet Dr. David Whitaker, who's an expert in Mormon history.
You brought the times and seasons.
I have indeed, sir. Together we're going to look at the genealogy of the man that could have owned these books originally, Hiram Smith. Dr. Whitaker's going to be a huge help in this investigation. So how important are these old books, allegedly old books?
Well, they're very important because they are often the source of early Mormon doctrines. The Smiths would have maintained copies of these, I think, in their own personal library, simply because their fathers were very much involved in the church leadership during this period.
Right, OK. So they stopped being made in 1846, and then I'm assuming they've been reproduced since.
In the last 40 years or so, several companies have undertaken to make photomechanical reproductions of them.
OK. Reprints of the times and seasons would be a perfect place for a forger to start. All they've got to do is buy themselves a set and use their expertise to make them look, smell, and feel old. What are you looking for to be able to decide whether it's a genuine old copy?
An original tends to be a little messier.
Yeah.
The ink, as it's typeset, is sometimes applied too heavy or too light. Well, and they got water stains, what they call foxing. Part of it is the way they cut the paper. You look at the originals and they aren't always neatly framed. The other is the binding is just so neatly done. There's just a sense of reproduction, to me anyway.
Dr. Whitaker wasn't 100% convinced with the binding. As periodicals put into a binding, they should be a little bit less uniform. He felt the printing was a bit too consistent, and if they had have been periodicals printed at different times, there would have been inconsistency. So all these concerns add up to maybe these books not being as old as we thought they originally were.
Should we go look at some genealogy material relating to these things?
Yeah, that'd be great. This is huge, this place, Dave.
This is probably the world's largest genealogical library.
The Mormon Church has spent a fortune meticulously documenting every family line there is around the world.
We're going to find out if there really is a link from Hiram Smith to the person who sold Ken the books.
The Smith family is a special case in Mormon history. Hiram Smith married in polygamy, actually, so there's a lot of information corresponds with the different wives and then his extensive family.
Here's Hiram Smith. He's had 3 wives and 8 children. With such a big family, that makes it very, very complicated.
There's just mountains of material for these men.
Yeah.
Luckily, the Smith family has done an awful lot of genealogy.
His oldest son was another Joseph, and he had several wives too. Mormons typically pass their prized possessions from their oldest children.
Yeah.
There it is.
And there you go.
We were able to trace the family tree down to the present day and confirm the name of the great-great-great-grandson of Hiram Smith, who brought these books to Ken to sell. But some of the most famous forgers of all time have been family members of famous people. Because they've already got the history and the provenance, all they've got to do is attach an item to it.
My work here in Salt Lake City is done.
Okay.
I'll follow you.
Now that we've confirmed the genealogy, we still have to confirm whether these are actual books from the 1840s and not just aged reprints.
You're one step closer.
Today, I'm at 14 Carat Jewelers in Beverly Hills to test the cufflinks. I want to find out what precious metals they're made from and hopefully to gauge what era they're made in. Ron.
Nice to see you, Andy.
Pleased to see you. Neil Armstrong's cufflinks given to him by President Nixon. We're hoping to find out these actually went up into space with him.
That's exciting.
What a lovely piece of history.
There's no discerning marks in terms of the stamp of 14 or 18 carat or sterling silver. And it's signed Balfour, which I'm sure is the brand of the finding, which is this,
The actual
what they
clip
call the
on the back.
alligator. We'll take it the next step further and go to our shop and have it all evaluated by the experts.
Brilliant.
This is Nader.
Nader.
Hi.
I'm Andy.
Meet Andy.
Nice to meet you. How do you test these? What would you do?
It's basically going to be touching this pad.
Yeah.
And this pen is going to be touching the item itself. The machine is going to tell me if it's gold or not. It runs current through the item itself to tell me the density and if the item is made of gold.
So this machine, if you get a piece that something you think is gold, you put it on there, you test it, it's not gold. So you could call this a divorce maker.
It certainly help.
Please tell me you haven't got these machines in England, because I'm already in enough trouble 3 times. I don't want to be a 4th time.
That I don't know. We're almost there. Test complete.
Not gold.
It's not gold.
Not gold. Right, okay. So what sort of metals could this be other than gold?
This is brass with plating on top.
What do you think, the capsules themselves, what could that be?
It's also brass. It's
Plated
nickel
brass?
plated.
But there's no question that the space capsules were made special. They had to have been casted special, designed special. It's not something that you can open up a catalog and there is
Not at all.
the space capsule.
Definitely specially made.
The value is obviously not in its precious metal.
Yeah.
The value is that it's such a unique item.
In your opinion, do you think that these could have come from that era, not a later replica kind of thing? Would you have any view on that?
I would say they were from that era, definitely, because I've seen a lot of work like this where there's that lead solder in the background. That's definitely around from that era.
Brilliant.
Sure.
These are old. By looking at the findings, by looking at the detail, you could see all the scratches and you could see where the gold plating has eroded to where it's down to the nickel on the tie bar. They've been worn. They're not new by any stretch of the imagination. So I would like to think that these are authentic.
That's great. I'm a little surprised they're made of brass, but to me, I think it's not about the precious metal in this. It's about the possible history. Nader and Ron both agree the cufflinks and the tie clip are not mass-produced. They're definitely handmade items. So now I've just got to see if I can take this story to the moon and back. I'd better go and do a bit more digging then.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming
Good
in.
luck.
We're going to just see if we can recreate the type of paper that our book might have. Ken Sanders, a rare book dealer, believes he's got a set of the times and seasons that belonged to an important figure in the early Mormon Church, Hiram Smith. But there are countless ways to forge old books. So I've gathered the team to see if we can make book papers look older than they are. We're using newspaper because it'll make it look a little bit older. Lid on. OK. OK, it's coming on. Let it drain. Let's get it flat. Forgers spend days creating paper, or whatever it takes to fool the experts. There. What do you think?
The color changed a little bit.
Yeah. It's not as grey, is it?
No. Matches that pretty well.
Looks old. Mm-hmm. Right, let's cut it down then. So, we're going to age this. What's on everyone's hands?
Oil.
Oil. So we're just going to touch this book.
Wow, it just pulls away pretty easy, too.
Of course it does. If you were poor and you had an expensive book, you certainly wouldn't be using super glue. So all we're using is just a bit of egg yolk.
And that adheres to it?
Yeah, well, egg yolk dries, doesn't it? Natural products are the faker's friend. So as the sandalwood cooks, the smell will seep into our book.
Okay, cool.
Books are easy to age. With a bit of egg yolk to bind the pages together, a bit of sandalwood, and a few bumps and knocks, all of a sudden a book starts to look, feel, and smell older than it actually is. We've got a book that could fool experts. If you've been around books all your life, collected since you were 14, you've probably restored books, and all we're doing, really, is playing around with the restoration process. I think Ken's good enough to do this. I'm not saying Ken would do such a thing. But
Maybe somebody else has done it.
But no, maybe somebody else has done it and passed them off. There's your black bag.
Okay.
There's our red cover. I think we're kind of getting there, don't you?
Yeah.
Now we've seen how easy it is for forgers to copy these books, we want to see if Ken's books are fakes or the original. And the first step on that is to check the binding. Don't know much about Nixon, do you?
I know virtually nothing about it. I know he did an interview with David Frost.
And did he have a series on television called Watergate? Andy and I have come to the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum to see if they have any records of the dinner that Richard Nixon hosted for the Apollo 11 crew, where Neil Armstrong may have given these cufflinks and tie clip to Adam's grandfather, Dino Mariscotti. It's a fantastic building, isn't it?
Wow, look at that.
I know. Why do the Americans do everything so well? Sandy.
Welcome.
Curtis Dowling.
Curtis, welcome.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Andy
Nice to
Smith.
meet you,
Nice
Andy.
to meet you, Sandy.
Great to have both of you here.
The reason for coming here is because we think we may have in that box Neil Armstrong's cufflinks that were given to him by President Nixon.
Wow.
The story is that Neil Armstrong was at a dinner with Nixon after the moon landings, and he enjoyed the dinner so much that when the chef came out, he gave these cufflinks to the chef.
If that's all true, they're very valuable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Have you ever seen a set like this before?
I have not seen them before, but they're beautiful.
The story goes that he had 3 sets made and gave one to each of the Apollo 11 astronauts. These, if they are what we hope they are Neil Armstrong's.
And they've been to the moon.
If the president gave these to me, you know, I'd wear them on pajamas. I wouldn't let go of them. The meal must have really been good.
Yeah.
I'd like to first show you an interesting feature that relates to the space program.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
This was all fresh cement, and we invited Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon, if he would come down and walk the walk.
Supposed to do that, aren't I? Oh, wow.
I think you've reduced him, Sandy, to a 4-year-old boy.
So, things like these cufflinks, did Nixon give cufflinks as a gift? Was that something that he did a lot?
I have some. There was a meeting with the astronauts before they went to the moon, and I can well understand him giving custom-made ones to the astronauts. We have a replica of the astronauts' outfit that they wore outside the capsule.
So if he took them to the moon, where would he have put these cufflinks in a spacesuit?
Well, I imagine there's plenty of pockets, but I doubt if it was on the actual outfit because they had other equipment. And I don't see French cuffs on.
No, definitely not.
So I don't know how you would
Definitely not
be able to wear them.
So what else we got in here, Sandy?
Well, this is a photograph from the Century Plaza in Los Angeles in August of 1969 in honor of the astronauts.
Oh, this is the dinner in which Neil Armstrong allegedly gave the cufflinks to chef Dino Mariscotti, Adam's grandfather.
And it was an elegant dinner, a beautiful evening. So if astronaut Armstrong was wearing them, he would probably have them on in this formal picture.
Now, this photograph doesn't show whether or not Neil Armstrong was wearing these cufflinks, but everyone was in a bow tie and a dinner suit. So there was no place for a tie clip. Here's the thing. If you were going out to dinner, you wouldn't put the tie pin in your pocket just in case you'd thought about giving them away.
No, you wouldn't, would you?
Just a thought.
I think if he had cufflinks given by the president, that this would be the occasion to wear them.
The fact that everybody at this dinner was wearing bow ties and would not have had the need for tie clips casts a real shadow of doubt on Adam's grandfather's story. But hopefully the Nixon Library will have something in their records that will give us more concrete answers.
That's interesting about that tie pin.
Yes.
That kind of bothers me a little.
It bothers me a lot.
So I'm going to introduce you to one of the researchers who will take you into the National Archives.
That'd be great.
Ian Delser.
Nice to meet you.
Curtis and Andy.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, gentlemen.
I hope you find what you're looking for.
Thanks, Sandy. Ian is a researcher at the Richard Nixon Library, which houses over 50 million documents from Richard Nixon's presidential term.
We do have a lot of information on Apollo in our research room.
Okay. After you, sir.
Thank you.
We're hoping we might find something in the archives to link our cufflinks and tie-pin to the Nixon and moon landing story. The name we're looking for is Dino Mariscotti. That's the head chef that these were allegedly given to.
Okay. It's a letter to Commander Armstrong from Richard Nixon.
Wow.
Now, if we read through this, very kind of you to invite me to attend an informal dinner with the Apollo 11 crew at the Kennedy Space Flight Center on July 15th.
Now, we believe that's when the cufflinks were given.
He clearly met with the astronauts before the mission.
Now, that helps.
Okay. Okay, this is the banquet itself.
Wow.
So you can see this was definitely an ornate occasion.
Well, yeah, very much.
Here we go. Here's a picture of Neil Armstrong. There's his cuff. If you want to look through that, we can kind of rule it out if it's a barrel cuff shirt, but if it's a French cuff shirt, then that's a good sign.
Well, have a look. You can see one of his...
That's French cuff. So they're definitely wearing French cuffs.
Perfect.
Well, definitely a step in the right direction, then.
Ah, you mean one small step in the right direction? Oh, sorry.
All right, but here we have something about the dinner. Dinner menu was submitted by the Century Plaza chef, who was held in high regard by his colleagues, but no name.
That's bizarre.
Right, OK. Hail to the chef is played.
Hail to the chief.
Oh, sorry, what am I saying?
So we've got an article from the New York Times, pastry chefs, put the final touches on 160 miniature moon rockets in sugar. Ernest Mueller, the hotel executive chef, worked on his masterpiece, a replica of the official Apollo seal, also in sugar.
But that says the executive chef.
No, executive chef's the head chef.
Right.
It's the head chef.
The executive chef is the man that would have come out and got the applause.
Dino wasn't the head chef.
And we learnt the head chef wasn't Adam's grandfather. It was someone called Ernest Mueller. Doesn't mean Adam's story is untrue. It just means his grandfather wasn't mentioned.
Ernest Mueller, the hotel executive chef.
I just have to go off what the article says.
Absolutely.
There's only fact. We know these cufflinks and tie-pin were custom-made, but nothing is linking these cufflinks and tie-pin either to the moon landing or Richard Nixon. Thank you, Ian.
It was a pleasure.
Grant and I are going to meet with Charlene Matthews, a bookbinding expert, to find out how books from the 1800s were bound.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hi.
Charlene?
Hi, Charlene. I'm Catherine. Nice
Hi,
to
I'm
meet
Grant.
you. We're also going to examine our Mormon books. We have the original issues of the Times and Seasons from 1841.
Ooh. This is the book we're trying to authenticate.
It's really cool.
So how are these periodicals from the 1800s made into books?
If you're working at books of the age we're talking about, in the early 1800s, people would purchase magazines or books from the printers, and they would take them to the bindery and have them bound up.
Yeah, okay.
Book binding had a lot of different styles, and that's why I got these books out for you here.
That's pretty.
When they bound periodicals into books, they were pretty much hand done, but in the late 1800s, what was happening is that the machine age had come in and binderies weren't just hand binderies anymore. Here's one of my books from the early 1800s. This spine was hand done.
Okay.
Charlene has examples of every kind of book binding there is. If our book is from the 1840s and not a reprint, it should have a hand-stitched binding. From what you've seen, do you think it's an authentic 1841 book?
It's actually very nicely done. Now, this binding, this is an interesting binding.
Does it look hand? Does it look machine?
If you look closely, this is not symmetrical. Slight mistakes, misspacing. Okay, looking at the outside of this book, the insides could be hand done, but without opening the spine and examining it. I wouldn't necessarily know. The only way to tell what kind of binding's been used is by cutting open the spine. There's no question about that.
Okay.
Okay. There is no way we can cut open these books to look at the binding. That would ruin the value. Since Charlene can't tell if the books are hand-bound by looking at the outside, we're going to have to find another way to peek inside the spine. Thanks, Charlene.
I need to peek inside the binding of these Times and Season books to see if they're machine-bound or they've been bound by hand. I think I've got quite an unorthodox way of doing that. Thanks for seeing me.
Not a problem. What you got over there?
Well, I've got some books that they're old. I mean, all I really want to try and see is how it's bound.
Well, we'll see. Let's try it.
Seeing as hospitals are too busy saving lives to X-ray our book, I've come to see Dr. Molnar at his veterinary centre.
Okay. I'm gonna shoot if you're ready on 1, 2, 3.
I guess if these are a different material...
Might not see anything. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. That's it. Let's see what came out.
Brilliant. OK. Now, that's not bad. You see the way these pages are bound? Old books would have been bound, not single-sheeted, bound into the paper.
Just bunches.
But bunches folded up and put into a book.
Gotcha.
Look, you can see stitching here. This book has been bound in the old-fashioned way. That's the first.
So it's an old book.
So it's an old book.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the assumption we're making. But the second part is these are fairly evenly spaced out. So it's not conclusive. It's just another part of the jigsaw. We've collected quite a bit of information on these books. Now I need to analyse it all and then head to Salt Lake City to give Ken my verdict.
Well, we spoke to Armstrong's wife, who was at the dinner.
Yeah.
She doesn't remember any cufflinks at all. But she also said it wouldn't have been Neil's style to give away a presidential gift in front of the president.
I mean, what about Buzz Aldrin?
We called him. He doesn't remember anything about the cufflinks.
Well, that's unfortunate. The investigation into these cufflinks and tie clip is becoming very difficult, and we're desperate to find any link between Neil Armstrong and Adam's grandfather, Dino Mariscotti.
What about Balfour? Wasn't that on the back of the alligator clip?
Balfour made tons of insignia pins for the military, stuff like that. They moved years ago and didn't keep any of the records.
Smithsonian Archive, please. I'd like some more information on the Apollo 11 cufflinks Michael Collins donated to the Smithsonian, please. Normally, this lack of evidence makes me think we're dealing with a clear fake. But our jeweler said these were custom-made cufflinks and very old.
Looks like Gus Grissom had a set of cufflinks too.
Who is Gus Grissom?
He's another astronaut. But he died in 1967. Nixon didn't take office till '69.
Well, then that means Gus had them before Nixon took office.
Check this out. Someone's selling similar-looking cufflinks that they got on a North America Aviation VIP tour.
What should we call North American Aviation?
They went out of business after the Apollo 1 fire. I mean, there's obviously a lot more of these cufflinks out there than we first thought. We thought there were just 3 pairs given to the 3 astronauts that went to the moon on that Apollo trip.
So how many sets are there of people that were given them, Mr. Smith?
Well...
And obviously Neil Armstrong, allegedly.
Sets that we physically know that have been given,
Yeah.
I can now name 2 official.
Go on, name them then.
Michael Collins.
Michael Collins.
Gus Grissom. But those are the only 2 names that we can solidly associate with this style of cufflink.
Gus Grissom had a set but died in 1967. And then Michael Collins, and they're at the Smithsonian.
First thing, we've got no proof that Nixon ever gave them to Neil Armstrong. Second thing, we know Neil Armstrong was at the meal. What we also know is no tie.
No, all bow ties.
So there's another hole. Then, Grandad is the head chef. Oh, no, he ain't. Because we found out
Because we know who the head chef was.
So, North American Aviation used to do a tour in which they gave away cufflinks commemorating the moon landing.
Right.
Gus Grissom.
No, this is a killer, this one.
He
That was the look you
a
gave.
set of those.
Stay with me.
Which are a match
on these ones
to those. Now, here's the thing.
Nixon didn't give these to Gus Grissom
No,
because Nixon wasn't in office.
These were given in 1967. Or before, sorry, 1967.
Yeah.
And Nixon came to office after.
In 1969.
1969. But the point is, Nixon had nothing to do with it. With a case like this, it's all word of mouth, so it all comes down to provenance. If you can start poking holes in the provenance, then the story starts to unravel. There are certain elements in this investigation that are starting to look like they couldn't have happened the way Adam's grandfather says they happened.
We have to base all our finding on circumstantial evidence, which means we do have our answer.
Yes, we do.
Tea?
Cup of tea.
Coffee.
Adam! How are you? All right?
Good. I'm good. There they are. And I'm dying to hear what you have to say about them.
What does it mean for these to be real?
The possibilities that those 3 pieces have could change quite a few lives.
And if they're not?
Then they're pretty.
We took them to a jeweler in Beverly Hills. They're made of brass.
Okay.
Which is right for the period. The other thing is, they weren't mass-produced at all. These were specially made.
Wow.
Next step for us was the Nixon Museum and Library.
Okay.
We dug up quite a lot. We saw menu cards from the dinner. We saw all sorts of correspondence. The conclusion is all the evidence points to the fact these cufflinks aren't real.
They're not. Okay.
One thing that really put the nail in the coffin for the story was this picture. And that's the photograph from the dinner before they ate. They're in dinner suits with bow ties on. He wouldn't have had a tie pin. He'd have had to carry that quite by chance in his pocket.
You're right.
So no $500,000, I'm afraid.
It was a great story. And I've got a beautiful set that maybe one day I'll wear. I still have a piece of my grandfather I can remember in a great story.
I've come to my final conclusion about Ken Sanders' Times and Seasons. So I brought them to his bookshop in Salt Lake City to deliver him my final conclusion. We've been busy, Ken.
Yes, sir.
I've found it quite simple over the years to age books.
Yeah.
So I took a brand new book myself because I wanted to see how
easy it would have been for a master forger if he'd have had his hands on these.
Yeah, I like the details of there's water staining along the edges. Curtis, I got to tell you, this is astonishing. So perhaps you are as good as you say.
Well, perhaps I am, Ken. First of all, we visited the family history library and were able to verify the genealogy.
Wow.
But we had some questions about the bindings. What I moved on to was having these books X-rayed.
I don't think I would have thought of that.
You can see it's not been bound in an expensive professional manner, as we know that it wouldn't be. What I'm seeing in this X-ray is that these sheets appear to be bound by a hand. So I have come to a conclusion. From all the research we've done, the conclusion is, Ken, these books are 100% real.
Oof. Didn't know where you were going with that for a minute there, Curtis. Wow. You're kind of leaving me at a loss for words here, Curtis.
It's just very, very exciting to have my intuition and instincts backed up by a real professional.
I also spoke to a friend of mine at a large auction house in New York, and he thinks your books are worth over $200,000.
Curtis, I can't thank you enough. Thank you, sir.
You've got the find of the century, Ken.
If we can succeed in selling these now, this is going to make a huge, huge difference.
Good. I better let you get on. With my verdict today, I've not just changed one person's life, I've changed an awful lot of people's lives. Because these books will resonate through the Mormon society like almost no other books have.